Welcome back to the basement where theology meets the thoughts of life. It's good to be with y'all here again for another episode, and just want to make sure you guys share the page. Make sure you share and like the video. Facebook.com/Wrath and Grace. That's what we're doing here, doing a podcast. So make sure you spread the word, let people know what's going on here on Wrath and Grace. We do have a website, wrathandgrace.com, where you can actually support the ministry. You can buy literature, there's conference messages, there's other podcasts we have that are dope podcasts. Go check it out. You go to the network, I believe link, if I remember right, you can subscribe to our podcast there where you can listen audio. So make sure you go to wrathandgrace.com. We do have a Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/the basement, and that's kind of like a little hub of community where you can go. And Wayne's always asking questions, and we go back and forth in the comment section, so that's pretty dope. In preparation of some of the episodes that we got coming up, so make sure you go to facebook.com/groups/the basement. Make sure you comment on the comment section every time we get on. We love to interact with your comments, and so make sure you bring your questions, your concerns, your disagreements, whatever the case is. We love to interact with you, so make sure you comment on the comment section so that we can, just chop it up right there live. So that'd be dope. All right, so here's my man Wayne. What's up, bro?
All right, nothing much. Not a whole lot going on my end. I thought it'd be nice to have our brother Danny with us again. He hasn't been with us since, let me see the last time he was in the episode 20. Episode 20, Once Saved, Almost Saved.
Dang, you remember the episode? I remember the episode. I don't remember the number. I just knew it was a season finale.
Yes. Yep. Cool. Season finale, episode 20.
Making your mark, bro.
Yeah.
I know. This is 8.
Yeah.
Twice. It means something.
Back again, right?
Not a one-hit wonder. I made it. I made it past the one-hit wonder mark. All right, cool.
Right. Not just one episode. Hi, Mom. This is number 2. 2 and counting. So
and 2 ...
Right. To be continued.
You got to speak that.
Or to continued. To be determined.
Just believe it.
I'm naming it. Los has a book on his shelf called Naming and Claiming.
Oh, no, I don't, bro. Come on.
It's a great book. The preface is done by
that's
Wayne.
In my heretical section over there. You know what I'm saying? All my heresy
Wayne wrote the
books.
preface, and it's wonderful. You can pick that up at Wrath and Grace. No, I'm kidding.
I did. Name and claim all of the heretical
so after I said
theology
that, this is
out
probably
there.
My last one.
So anyway, we did an episode on false teachers this season.
For real?
Yes, we did.
Nice.
So this would have fit right in line with that. You should have been on that one and started off the episode like that.
Oh, shit. Yeah, that would have gone great.
Well, anyway, hey, we're back again, y'all. I'm not sure what episode number this is going to be because I'm not sure when we're going to release it. We're trying something new this season where we're pre-recording episodes, but it's not like we're just going, to record an episode and not let y'all know. I try to give y'all a heads up and let y'all know where we're going with this episode. So let me just give y'all an intro to this one. This is called the Doctrines of Grace intro. This is not the Doctrines of Grace 101. This is not, an episode where we're going to go one by one through the Doctrines of Grace. We're not dealing with that this is going to be an intro. This is the way that we feel out the topic and then move forward with it. We understand that not everyone who watches The Basement is going to label themselves a Calvinist or even a 5-point Calvinist. But we're going to talk about the doctrines of grace. We're going to deal with how we came to find out about the doctrines of grace. We're going to talk a little bit about what it is and, some of the, I guess you could say, some of the concerns that we have for people that are in this camp. We're going to talk about it today. This is an intro episode where we give y'all our own personal thoughts, experiences, and I guess you could say our background on this right here. So anyway, I thought it'd be good to have our brother Danny with us today. He always brings something great to the table. So yeah, and
feels good to be here, man.
Yeah, and Los, you've been in the faith like with the doctrines of grace for a minute. So
yeah.
You've been there, so
not as long as people think, though.
I kind of fell into it. I didn't even know it. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. All right. So let's start off. When someone says, "What theology do you guys ascribe to? What theology, do you go by? Do you study under and stuff like that?" Reformed theology, the doctrines of grace, it comes up. How do you even start to explain that to people? Like, do you just be like, "Yo, yeah, what I believe in is what the Bible says." That's always a go-to, no matter what denomination you're in.
Honestly, I would say that, and I would back it up with I'm under the conviction that the Reformed school of thought teaches faithfully or helps me understand faithfully, not perfectly, but faithfully, what the scriptures teach overall, and specifically towards or with or in. What am I? I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. When we're dealing with God, how God saves, but then again, just in scripture overall.
Right.
So I would say I believe what the scriptures teach, but this is kind of how I get there. And I think that it's faithful.
Got you.
I didn't just pick it.
Got you.
Yeah.
How about you, Los?
Yeah, I think.
Aren't you that reform guy?
Yeah, I was.
You have the podcast in your house.
Right.
That's weird.
I would definitely say I'm reformed.
Right.
And I think there's a distinction between being, historically speaking, from reformed to being a Calvinist. I like to make those distinctions just because historically. With your pinky up. But yeah, I would say I'm a Reformed Baptist, to be more specific. And I know there's like nuances in there when it comes to what I believe. I think one of the nuances would be that I'm not confessional.
So you're not truly Reformed.
That's what some people.
That's
would
the
say.
argument.
So yeah, I would say I'm reformed in that I believe in the doctrines of grace. I have a high view of the sovereignty of God. My soteriology is definitely reformed, and my hermeneutic and exegesis is definitely reformed. Of course, with historic premill, looking at the Old Testament to the New, being post-millennial, not dispensational. So, and yeah, I know you can be Arminian and dispensational, but I think historic premill, as far as how you exegete passages in scripture, I'll be honest, I think you have to be reformed at that point, to be honest with the text.
Right.
But so I would say, yeah, I'm reformed in that sense.
Because most of the times when we hear reform, we think about criminals and stuff like that.
Right.
And we're over here talking about we go to church and we're reformed.
Like, no, I read the Bible. Chill. I don't steal Bibles. I read them.
Like my denomination has a process in credentialing people, and they call it the probation period.
Oh, wow.
Probationary period. And I'm like, you got to change that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
We're reformed.
I told them.
You got to go through this
and I'm
probation
on probation
period.
now,
like,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
that's funny.
They all looked at me like, what do you mean? I'm like, let me explain.
Right. You already looked the part.
Yeah. You're not going to put something
Can I say that?
Yeah. Bro, you're not going to put something on my ankles, you know what I'm saying, to keep track of me. You know what I'm saying?
Funny,
like
bro.
That whole thing, house arrest and all that. Like, that's not going to happen.
Wow.
You know, I think the language, though,
Yeah.
all jokes aside, I think the language and being specific is important when you talk about what you believe. You know,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of, like I always say, there's always baggage that people place on labels. It's like, okay, let me unpack for you what I mean by when I say I am reformed.
Right.
That's actually why I don't call myself a Calvinist. Because most times in conversation, you don't have time to hash that out. So
Yeah,
I just stay
right.
away from it altogether.
Yeah,
Like, I'm a
understand
Christian. What do you call yourself?
Yeah, I'm a Christian.
Okay. All right. Some
Yeah.
people don't say Christian. They say I'm a follower of the way. So they say stuff like that. Like they go around these titles and stuff
I might
like
get
that.
more specific and say that I might say that I'm a follower of Jesus.
Okay.
Because then it's more intimate than, at least in our culture, than saying I'm a Christian. Because everybody's a Christian.
Christian is
Donald
oh,
Trump's
man.
a Christian.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
He's whack. So
Yeah.
like, if I say like I'm a follower of Jesus, it's like in your face. Like, no, I for real. I take what he says seriously.
Right.
No, I get it. I think even just breaking down, because people always go, what do you mean by reformed? And I just start explaining little things. I don't get too deep into it because it can really surprise people when you start telling them church history. The fact that Reformed theology is talking about coming from a certain period called the Reformation, the Great Reformation in church history. You know, when you start bringing up,
By that point, you lost him.
yeah, Wycliffe,
You're
and
going
you
too
start
far.
bringing up, what's his name, Goose, Huss, John Huss,
Yes.
Martin Luther. You start talking about John Calvin and even Zwingli and all of those guys. You start talking about that stuff, it loses them. It starts sounding just like a history lesson, and you're like, no, listen, this is like explaining how the Reformed faith has evolved throughout the years. And it didn't just start with the Reformed, with the Reformation. It started obviously way before then, but
Yeah, and I think there's even like differences in that when you talk about Reformed theology, specifically when we're talking about it now. We're talking about the doctrines of grace, the sovereignty of God's biblical soteriology. But there is
that's a lot of big words.
Well,
my head hurts.
look at it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
No, that's another thing. That's another knock
You
we
can
get.
pause this
As
and look it
Reformed-
up. That's the
as-
great thing about what we're
Yeah,
doing.
that's what
That's
you
true.
should do. You know what I'm saying? But
That's another knock. Is like, you guys always use big words and you just want to sound smart and
That's true.
hey, I worked hard for that word. You know what I'm saying?
right. This was not in our vocabulary
no,
a couple
no,
years
to
ago.
say that, you know what
When
I'm
I
saying?
started going to the gathering and I would listen to you and like Eric and everybody like talking in the back after service, I went home and I was like, I gotta get in with these guys.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what they're saying, but it sounds great. So
Yeah.
I started reading
right,
just to
and
keep up.
see, that's the right response. A lot of people
so
don't
do that.
Yeah, they're turned off by Reformed theology because of what you just said.
Yeah.
You guys are using all these big words, and you're losing me. It's like, well, learn. You know,
Yeah, learn.
grow up a little bit. Like,
Why are we
you
so
know.
against learning? That's a whole episode by itself. But like,
Yeah.
why
I'll be
are
back
we
for that one.
why are we too cool for school?
Right.
Oh,
And I think that the distinction with Reformed thinking and those of us who understand Reformed theology is that when I hear that someone's Reformed, for instance, like Benito, right?
One of the elders at our church.
Right. So
The man.
when we look,
Yeah.
when we were first interacting, when he had come to faith, he started talking about Reformed theology, and I was like, "Do you know about that? Hey, unpack that for me real quick, because I wanted to know if he really knew," and he really knew about it. That's the distinction I think between Reformed thinking and Arminian thinking.
Yeah.
As an example, like Arminians, I was one, didn't know I was one, because in practice I was, the outwork of my faith was Arminian.
Right.
So most Arminians don't know they are Arminians. But when you say you're of Reformed faith,
Right.
you've taken some time to think about that carefully.
hopefully.
I call
Right.
it. That's why you woke. You woke up.
But that's not the bag. My friends that are Arminians and know what they're talking about when they're saying Arminian theology, but it does have that distinction. That basically speaking, the outworking of that particular theology demands definition
Yeah.
and specifics and things like that. So that's why we use these terms that we use all the time. We've thought deeply about some things.
Yeah.
So some people might see that as proud or being prideful, but that's my experience.
No, I get it. So that was how you came to discover Reformed theology?
It was actually through non-Reformed thinkers like Ravi Zacharias, Os Guinness.
Okay, so it wasn't when Benno came to you and said that. It was
no,
before
I had
then.
known then.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew.
So
I
you
knew
were
then.
testing him when you asked him to break it down.
Yeah,
Hey.
yeah.
Okay.
Because when I hear people say they know something, especially like Reformed theology, I'm gonna push to see how much they know.
Okay.
Not that they might know more than I do. I ran into that.
Right.
You know, I was like, oh snap, like you know more than me. You know.
All right. Yeah, that's cool. You know,
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah. Stop.
I believe you.
Stop.
I believe you. Enough.
Yeah.
Right.
My
I'm
head
just
hurts.
scratching the surface. I have not reached my final form.
Bro, stop. I gotta go. Come on, my wife.
It's happened. You know,
Right.
so
So Ravi was one way that you came to discover.
absolutely.
How though? Because I never really
Because
heard
he-
him talk about these things.
Well, because he upgraded my way of thinking
Right.
to be able to understand certain things.
he was a prerequisite.
Yeah, like I was like I
He was
don't.
the gateway drug.
Yeah,
No, it's true.
I
I
could-
smoked some Ravi and it was
It's
over.
it's either Ravi, John Piper.
right.
Let me see. There's a couple gateway preachers that'll get you in the door.
Yeah, yeah. I think with Ravi too. I think it was just he demanded you to elevate your way of thinking.
Okay, got you.
You know what I'm saying? And so, because he was speaking in such deep philosophical ways, it was like, I don't understand what this dude is saying, but I'm going to understand it. I listened to a podcast of his like 4 or 5 times until I got it.
Right.
Yeah.
And once I got it, I was like, okay, now, you know. So as I was climbing up the ladder and upgrading my thinking, I ran into John Piper, and then he started talking about Reformed theology. I said, what is that? Ran into R.C. Sproul, John MacArthur, you know, Vodi Bachman, all these guys. And then I understood what that was. And I looked at my Bible, I looked at that. I was just like, yeah, that's what it is.
Right. Right. That's
So
what's up. How about you, Danny?
What was the question?
How did you discover Reformed theology or the doctrines of grace? Whatever route you want to go through. I'm going with more Reformed theology tonight.
Okay. Yeah.
You can talk about the doctrines of grace too. Whatever.
So I became a believer when I was 20. So 5 years ago, and I grew up in a house where my dad is a Christian household for the most part. But my dad was Pentecostal.
Okay.
And so when I got saved, that was my school of thought,
Mm.
was kind of, Pentecostal and how they process things. And I was living in Florida, and I felt, you call it whatever you want, a calling or something told me to move back into the city.
Mm.
And so I did. And a few months later, I stumbled upon the gathering.
Mm.
A friend was like, hey, I'm going to this church. I'm checking it out. Come with me. So I went, and it turned out Los was actually the pastor.
Wow.
So this guy right here was my introduction to Reformed thinking. And I didn't take it as such. Like,
Thank God he wasn't your exit as well.
Well, once he wrote that book that I mentioned earlier, I don't know.
Whatever,
Why
bro.
am I here? But I didn't think of it as Reformed theology. It didn't. I mean, the term was tossed around here and there, and it was pretty. Looking back now, I can see how obvious it was that cats were flexing those muscles. But I didn't take it that way. I was just like, these guys know what they're talking about. I was hungry to learn, and so I just hung out with them, and I don't know. I was kind of saved into it almost.
Mm.
Almost. I was Pentecostal for like 4 months.
Wow. Wow. I mean, yeah. Let me think about this. I would definitely say I went the John Piper route. Always, I think somebody shared it with me. I was into CHH at that point, so obviously I probably heard it off of like a Lecrae album or a Tripoli album. I got introduced to Cross Movement, and Cross Movement kind of pushed me in that direction. I'm trying to think. Most of my intros to Reformed theology was through CHH because I was listening. I wasn't really listening to guys like Canton Jones or what's the dude, the fat dude, older dude.
He's watching.
Older. Nah, I don't even know if these guys are around anymore. Oh man, I can't remember his name, but he's the fat dude. He's a big dude though. He's big though. Like he's
They're gonna
big.
shut us down on Facebook.
Oh
for that.
man,
You know that, right?
he's a heavy set rapper. Anyway,
That's better.
he was like real famous back in the day. Like heavy set Christian rapper. You're supposed to be the CHH historian.
Did he sound like Biggie?
No, not that one.
Look
But
at me.
anyway, he had like letters in his name. But anyway,
Yeah, everybody does.
yeah, I know. So anyway, I not like
Yeah,
him.
letters in
I
his
was
name.
listening to
That's
like
funny.
the more serious guys that were serious about the theology. I even got introduced to like Shy Lin and those guys in Lamp Mode and stuff like that. So because of CHH Christian hip hop, I was introduced to Reformed theology, and then Shy Lin, I think, is the person that mentioned the doctrines of grace or maybe Calvinism, and I stayed away from it. And I was just like, what is he talking about? Like, this dude is like getting way too deep with his thinking. Now this sounds like a cult. And then I got to pretty much like just that stage where you get on the internet where you just start getting all this information, and I got information overload. This was right around the year 2014. And if you remember 2014, it was memes and all types of information out there. It was conspiracy theories everywhere.
Bro, I don't remember 2004. I was probably at the skate park.
Yeah, 2014 was crazy for a Christian to be a Christian that wasn't connected to a church, or heavily connected to a church. So I started researching and started learning so much stuff, and then I got information overload and I broke down. And then I ended up running into James White, and James White kind of like guided me into the areas that I needed to go. He broke down everything one by one and said, yo, this is this is that, this is this, and helped me to understand what it was that I had been listening to for the last 5 years and didn't even know it was a bunch of Calvinist preachers, a bunch of Reformed dudes. I didn't even know what it was called. I just thought it was biblical. I was like, these guys are good biblical teachers.
Nice.
So yeah, anyway, that was my
So you
intro
came
to
in, like,
it.
the back door. He was like, this
Right,
is it?
right, exactly,
wow, okay.
exactly. Like I was
Yeah,
sitting
that's
in
my
there
seat. All right.
for a minute, and then finally I saw this sign on the school sign. It was like Reformed. I'm like, oh snap! I've been in a Reformed camp for all these years and didn't even know it. So I love the preaching from the Reformed guys. I just didn't know it was called that. So anyway, we got the doctrines of grace, right? So that's, usually by Tulip is a good way to understand it. Totally depraved, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, and perseverance or preservation of the saints. Last year I couldn't name those things, just so you know. So I've been studying. So anyway,
Hey.
you got those 5 points right there. Now, knowing those 5 points, right? How have the doctrines of grace transformed you in your walk? Understanding these doctrines of grace, knowing what they mean, and just go a little bit into how they've transformed you in your walk. It's more than just information.
Yeah. I think for me, it's helped me to trust God more.
And okay.
Because of the high view of the sovereignty of God. It was prior to Reformed thinking, it did feel like a lot was put on me. A lot of personal responsibility to the point of, having to do things myself, so there was less trust prior to Reformed thinking. And it doesn't mean that my desire to want to control has gone away.
Right.
But it means now I have more of a leash on it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So like, it still bites, but the
Right.
bite doesn't hurt as much.
You realize you're not in control of your salvation like you thought you were.
Yeah, or anything.
Anything.
God is sovereign over all things. And
Right.
I think, I like what someone said before when I was going through something, that when life gets out of control, it just shows you how much not in control you are, and how much you have to rely on God who is in control.
Right.
But when things are going well, that's when we forget that.
Amen.
And that's why God allows trouble to get us to look to him, right? And so I think the doctrines of grace has pushed me to the sovereignty of God to trust, especially in times of trouble, in times of sickness, or in times of betrayal, in times of, depression and anxiety, all those things. Like, my anchor has been the gospel, but through the lens of understanding Reformed theology.
Gotcha.
I think the gospel is more clear, for sure, because it's more hands off. It's like, okay, God, I have to trust you at this point. You're in control.
Yeah.
How
about you, Danny?
Yeah, for me, I've kind of treated them as a foundation on which I kind of build everything else. So a couple years ago, I was having a conversation with Abner, and
Stract.
Yeah, the Wolverine. I was having a conversation. I was actually telling him how annoyed I was with the Reformed Church, because it felt like I kept on Facebook, or it didn't matter what passage somebody preached from. They were always talking about one of the doctrines of grace. And I was like, man, that's cool or whatever. And it's like, I always saw cats arguing like, oh, God saves, you don't save yourself, and you don't choose God. And I was just like, yeah, I do realize there's other stuff to talk about. So I was talking with Abner, and I was just frustrated because I'm like, man, y'all act like this is it. And I gave him the example. I was like, if I'm at the mall and I'm struggling with lust, I don't think about tulip. I'm thinking about a proverb, or I'm thinking about, something Jesus might have said. And he was like, well, you ought to view, he said something along the line of the doctrine. I said, I'm not thinking about the doctrines of grace. And he was like, well, you could think about them in the sense of that kind of foundation. Like, why don't you sin? Okay, you're going to a proverb, but you're going to a proverb because God is sovereign in your life. So it's kind of like the backdrop upon which I create or paint the rest of my canvas.
Absolutely. That's a good imagery.
That's how I've done it. I spent a lot of time studying it so that I could understand it and really grasp it, and not just in my mind, but to where it actually started to affect me in my walk and as I went about my day. But then once I got to the point was okay, this is working in me. I stopped giving it so much attention to where it was like that's all I looked at and read about. And I started doing other things and reading other things, building on top of that, not abandoning it, building on top of it, which I think is the point of these doctrines. Right.
Yeah, I would definitely say they're the foundational doctrines that we always fall back on. It seems almost every episode that we do, no matter what the topic is, it always comes back to one of those, good old faithful doctrines of grace.
Yeah.
The fact that, man is totally depraved. We've fallen because of sin. Mankind has been tainted and utterly ruined because of sin.
Well, everything in the Christian's experience is rooted in the fact that God has done a work in them, and this is what that work looks like. These doctrines display and help people understand what has God done. Okay, well, this is what he's done, what he's doing, what he will do, and they're there for us to, like I said, build upon. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. That's probably why you guys keep coming back to it, because you almost can't help it. Like,
you can't.
Why do I care? Why on a Thursday night? I could be editing a YouTube video right now.
Right.
Why on a Thursday night after a 10-hour workday am I sitting with these guys talking about the Bible? Like, why am I doing that? Well, it's because God at one point wouldn't leave me alone, and he did something that hasn't been undone since. And so I can't help but be here and talk about these things.
Absolutely.
That's good.
It helps me to understand my purpose. Like,
that's deep, bro.
Yeah, it really does. You know what I mean? Like, to know why it is that Jesus did what he did and what I'm saved for, those things just the doctrines of grace just help me to understand why I'm even here, why any of us are here.
Yeah, for real.
It points me right back to my purpose, to Jesus's, the purpose for Jesus dying, the purpose for everything in existence. It goes right back. And even when you start bringing in, now that starts bringing in the solas, you know what I mean? You start bringing in the fact that everything is for the glory of God alone. Soli Deo Gloria, you know what I mean? Like, it brings it right back.
I think it pushes right back to what we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
You know, and remember what we weren't prior to salvation. Yeah. I mean, that's the first point.
Yeah.
Being totally depraved, dead in our sins, you know, but then he made us alive in Christ, you know. So that's starting point for me, because I think the rest follows, like being, you know, chosen before the foundations of the world. Yeah. But I didn't deserve to be even in the mind of God. You know, I didn't deserve, you know, to be chosen. But yet he saved me. You know, he saved me by the cross. And then, you know, when he came to save, he would save me to the uttermost. You know what I'm saying? He would overcome my rebellion. You know, he will overwhelm my resistance. You know, I didn't want him, but he wanted me, and he got me. And then once he got me, he keeps me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the one I think that a lot of people have a problem with, and with the whole personal responsibility issue and all that. But it's like, look, you don't want to be Lord of your salvation. You know what I'm saying?
Oh my gosh, if I was Lord of my own salvation, bro.
Because that's really what it is.
Forget it.
You know, that's it's who's Lord of your salvation, who keeps you.
Yeah.
You know, if you believe you can lose it, if you believe, like some conservative Arminians would say, forfeit your salvation, then, you know, if you can do that, then how are you not keeping that? You know what I'm saying? Like, who is it ultimately up to? Is it you or God? And it really is you if you reject what the Bible teaches about him keeping us. You know, and so that it's a deep issue, I think, because those questions have to be answered. And when I start digging deep enough, and there was two pastors I was talking to one time at a conference, and they happened to be Arminian brothers, and I kept pushing them into their belief that you can lose your salvation. And they had to accept the fact that they were the ones at the end of the day that would keep themselves saved.
That's what it comes down to.
You know, you keep pushing, and they say, no, it's by grace. Yeah, but I kept pushing, and they say, yeah, if I ultimately say that I don't want God anymore, then of course I forfeit, and then that it's up to you then.
Their salvation is in their hands.
Yeah, it's
salvation
like,
or
destruction. And Jesus made it very clear, absolutely clear in John 6, you know, that he draws and he keeps, and he won't lose one. All that he raises and draws to himself, he keeps.
Amen.
He will lose none, he said. So you're saying he could lose some.
And he not only says it, he also demonstrates it. So there's it would be one thing if he was just like, oh, like I'm going to. But then later on, when he's talking with Peter, like, Peter, you're going to blow it. However, I've prayed for you. And when you're restored, when all this is over and you repent.
Oh, man.
Like, strengthen your brother, minister out of that. So he displayed, like, I told you I'm going to keep you.
Man.
Amen.
See, that's
boom.
good.
That one's for free.
That's good. That's good. So you have Reformed theology as the umbrella, and underneath that umbrella you have Calvinism, correct? I mean, is that pretty much good?
Calvinists won't say that.
I know, but I feel like Calvinism comes from a Reformed theology.
You know,
it descends from Reformed theology.
Well, so number one, we said this before. John Calvin's rolling in his grave when we're calling ourselves Calvinists.
Right.
He had an unmarked grave for a reason.
That's crazy.
He didn't want a pilgrimage happening at his tombstone. So how much more wouldn't he want us to call ourselves Calvinists? But that's a discussion for another day.
Hold on real quick. Hold on. There was a quote the other day. So, all right. I was reading from Spurgeon, and maybe we can talk about this on another episode, but
we're going to get a lot of people in our camp upset.
Humble Calvinism. That's what the book I'm reading. Humble Calvinism. And so in the book, it's talking about not getting so caught up in the title and in the system of Calvinism and all of those things. And
Nice.
Spurgeon actually said, so do not give yourselves up to any system. This is Spurgeon saying this, and say, I follow this doctor or that. John Wesley is not our master. That is Jesus Christ. John Calvin is not our master. That is Jesus Christ. These men were great and good. They were worthy of the love of all the church of God. But we do not call them teacher. We may follow the man. This is it, y'all. We may follow the man as far as the man follows Christ, but not an inch further. We must sit at Jesus' feet, humble, teachable, and childlike. That's how the book ends.
Oh my God.
Yo, this book has helped me out in so many different ways of understanding how to even comprehend the doctrines of grace and how to live these things out.
Spurgeon with his words is like a master Jedi with his lightsaber.
Yes.
He just knows what he's doing.
It's like Count Dooku or Mace Windu. Like, shing, shing, shing. Like, he's no joke. He knows different forms and, Spurgeon ain't no joke.
Yeah, that's good.
So, go ahead forward. I'm sorry. I cut you off when you were just talking about Calvin is probably rolling in his grave.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think what we're Arminians, I've heard them criticize us repackaging Calvinism into calling it the doctrines of grace, because Calvinism has that historic weight to it where it's offensive. Not like, I mean, you're offending someone, but that it's out the cut, because it was a response to Arminian theology, and so some of them see it that way as an attack. And so calling it the doctrines of grace softens the blow. Like, you know what I'm saying? So they think we're repackaging them with that title, and that might have been the case for some people who actually came up with the term doctrines of grace, but I think that is a good way to say it, because it definitely highlights grace throughout each point.
Every point.
You know what I'm saying? Every point you can see God's grace in it. You can see that God makes the first move. And so that's, I think doctrines of grace, when talking about the 5 points, is helpful. I think it is helpful to avoid terminology that does come with a lot of historic baggage with it, for lack of a better word. So, and again, some guys that are Calvinists, mainly Presbyterians that are Paedo-Baptists, they stick to using the term Calvinism. They're the true Calvinists, as some of them say. I respect that. I wouldn't call myself that. I just call myself
the rest of us are
Reformed.
Sumerians.
Not all of them say that. I know brothers that would, but what I'm saying is, I think it's important to say that I do believe in the doctrines of grace. I am Reformed, and I respect the term Calvinism, though I do criticize it in that I don't think John Calvin would like us using that term,
Right. No, I got it. For sake of distinction and everything like that, I'm just kind of running through some things. So you have Reformed theology, and somewhere in there you have Calvinism, and somewhere along the lines of there you also have evangelical Christians, which I would feel like fits a bunch of Christians under that umbrella.
Some people don't like that term anymore.
I know too.
Like,
listen, everyone has a problem
and,
with titles.
Yeah, and I think I get it, because you don't want to associate yourself with someone who's a heretic and calls themselves an evangelical Christian. So I get it.
Yeah,
it's kind of like an overused and abused term.
Yes,
nowadays.
Yeah. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Reason why I'm bringing that up is because I went to the basement, the Facebook group that we have. If you're not part of the Facebook group, go ahead and join our Facebook
Repent.
group. Right. The basement, where theology meets the thoughts of life. And I asked a question to the members in the basement. I said, what are the greatest challenges facing evangelical Christians today? And I'm just going to read a few of these responses on here. Maybe if you guys can think of any, where you just want to comment on these. I have Brittany Lamke says that one of the greatest challenges facing evangelical Christians today is evangelical Christians.
Nice.
A lot of people like that comment, and
High
we're
five.
agreeing with that.
Yeah,
You
that
get a
was
gold
good.
star for that one.
She's a supporter too, man. Shout out to you.
Someone else said false teachings is what's one of the greatest challenges. Ray says the chaos of 2020 exposing idols may be a false identity as well. It seems to always come back to someone or something other than God or on the throne, or something other than Christ as foundation for our identity. Thought that was good. Dre Thompson says infighting is one of the challenges, which
What fighting?
infighting,
What is that?
Fighting within ourselves.
Oh,
Yeah.
like, you know how the Avengers was
and Civil War.
Civil War.
Civil War.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I was
That's-
there.
Yes.
I saw
The
the whole thing.
best.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think Winter Soldier was better than that one. But
What?
Civil
Yeah,
War
bro.
was really good.
Winter Soldier was the bomb, bro.
It was good. I don't know about better than
yeah,
I don't know about
no,
better
I'm
than
sorry.
Civil War
Man.
was great.
Nah, I don't.
Civil
it
War
good.
was Avengers 2.5.
Civil War is
Winter
what
Soldier was Winter Soldier.
Here we go.
So,
Civil
here
War
we
is
go.
what made room and made it more possible for Thanos to do what he did.
That elevator scene though.
Yeah, I know.
Come
the
on,
elevator-
man.
Okay, yeah, but the
Then
elevator
when he
scene,
unmasked the Winter Soldier, that whole fight scene. Come on now.
that was hot.
Come
Him
on
jumping
now.
out the window of like a 10-story. Yeah,
Come
I hear
on.
you. I hear you.
We got to save that
Then
for
he
another
took down
episode.
that helicopter or whatever, that whole thing. Then he just looked at it quick and then bounced. That was. Come
Nah,
on,
he was a
man.
G for that.
Come on.
Yeah,
So
thug level.
Debate's
100,
over.
But,
right.
No, yeah, but
I get it. Someone else mentioned racism. Oh, that brings back all the seriousness to the topic.
I think that that's definitely one of the bigger, especially
One of the greatest challenges to the evangelical church
today. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially considering the church's
I think
loose role in
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
I'll say
so-
the American church.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. But yeah, thank you for clarifying.
Right,
Yeah.
right, for sure.
The church.
The
I'll
lack
put it that
of
way.
the lack of persecution or being complacent. Alyssa Wade said that one.
That's a challenge.
Yes.
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 Our lack of persecution.
Yes,
Yeah.
is leading
Yeah.
to complacency.
I think persecution wakes people up.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Yeah.
You know.
I know. Shoot, this isn't persecution, but like when coronavirus hit, and it was kind of like everybody had this fat question mark above their heads.
Mm-hmm.
Yo, I was freaking out because I didn't know. Like many people, I didn't know what the future is gonna look like.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that kind of forced me, like, do you really believe what you believe? And yeah, so I think that's a good answer.
Brittany Lamke again. She says low view of God and Scripture, the gospel. They have a low view of mortifying sin, a low view of the crucified life, and they have a high view of man. Even when it comes to calling, denomination, and theologians, they have such a high view of those things, yet such a low view of the things that actually matter.
I take it she's reformed.
Yes.
She sounds reformed.
Josh Griffiths even said short attention spans due to extended exposure to media. Short attention spans. I would agree with that being a challenge today. It's it's part of the reason why let me stop giving blanket statements, but why a lot of people have problems reading for a long period of time, like,
Or period.
yeah.
Right.
So like,
Yeah.
that's why I kind of did this, because I was like, I can see where that's the case, but then I also see room for growth in how we communicate. And the reality of it is, like, you're gonna have to. I know I'm gonna get crucified for this, but you're gonna have to go with the times to certain degrees. So like, if I go to a foreign culture and their form of communication is a certain way, and I'm trying to talk to them, I have to talk to them in their language. I'm not going to be able to go over there and just start speaking English and using American, way of, like, my cultural way of speaking and expect them to understand it. So I'm going to have to adapt my message to make it palatable for them. So, like, I don't know. It's kind of like, do all sermons have to be an hour long? Like,
I saw that question on Facebook the other day. Someone said, "How long do sermons have to be?" And it was a big debate. I was like,
you
"Come
see what
on,
I mean?
guys.
Like, why is that a debate? What
That's
does it matter?"
crazy.
Like,
I think the best answer was, as long as it takes for the message to be delivered.
Right.
There you
I've
go.
had sermons go 18 minutes. I've had some go 45.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think the text gives you how much it demands as far as time.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes sometimes a text is just simple.
Yeah.
You know, and some people don't like that, but it's true. Sometimes the text is actually saying what it's saying. You know,
Yeah.
it's a plain meaning. It's something that is understood, and we're just there. We're just supposed to teach that. You know, and some people go mining to the point where you're not even in the text anymore. You're into a whole other thing. So time for me isn't an issue. I think that I don't like going over an hour, to be honest.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I've gone 18, and at max, I did go about 59 minutes one time.
59 minutes.
Yeah.
Listen to this guy.
Yeah, for real. I didn't do an hour. It was
59 minutes,
50.
30 seconds.
I remember
60
because I
seconds
recorded it. I was like, wow, 59 minutes. Boom.
So I like his answer because I
yeah.
do think that even for me personally, I want to develop a better I want to grow in my habit of quieting myself and taking time to I haven't heard this term in a while, but like using spiritual disciplines. We now call it the means of grace, but it is a discipline. They are disciplines.
Spiritual disciplines is something we definitely need to do an episode on. We talked about doing an episode on that before, but we will get into that.
I'll be here for that one too.
Yes.
But
I think when we do it too, just a note, we need to be sympathetic to full-time workers, people that work full-time, because we've had this discussion too.
Yeah.
Like there was like this demand. I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're cool.
But I was going to say,
No, I'm kidding.
we had this talk before about this high demand for these hours in prayer, this devotional time we should have. And it's like, yeah, easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're a full-time minister. That's what you're supposed. You literally
Right.
you're a paid Christian. So it's like I'm not, right? Like I have to go to work.
It's tough.
And my job has nothing to do with the Bible,
Yo.
so I have to think about other things.
Right. And I come home and sometimes my feet are killing me, my knees hurt, you know, and things like that. Doesn't mean we don't, you know, get into the scriptures or we don't devote ourselves. It looks different.
Exactly.
It looks
You know,
different.
right.
A lot of me feeding my faith comes through podcasts and lectures and things like that. So like I'll read and stuff, but yeah.
It's tough.
Two more things. Another one that a couple people actually ended up saying was where the gospel gets attached to so many different agendas. That's one of the biggest challenges facing
Like saying this
evangelical
is a gospel
Christians.
issue or whatever.
Yeah. I think anytime you put something in front of gospel, it could be a problem.
Yeah, and we talked about that. Remember Jesus Plus, the episode called Jesus Plus.
Right. Social gospel,
Yeah.
prosperity gospel.
Yeah.
You know, you can keep going. It's like, you know, anytime you've done that, just leave the gospel alone.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. We've dealt with not messing with the gospel. I think we've done 3 episodes on that, something like that, along those lines. That's another thing that we get knocked against all the time. You guys only talk about the gospel. Well, the gospel is life.
Yeah, I like to see them before God say that.
Yeah.
God has been talking about the gospel since Eden. So
Right. God's been talking about gospel since the beginning.
Right. He preached it to Abraham.
He was
You
the
know what I'm
first.
saying?
Yeah, God has been the first gospel preacher.
Right. First event or not first dang it, not evangelical. What was I gonna say? I don't remember what I was gonna say.
One more thing. Let me see. Where's it at? And then someone else said the challenges that the evangelical church is facing today is the same as they always were. Heart issues and dealing with personal sin, which is
The root of it.
yeah, the root of all of this stuff. I think is just getting right back to sin. And then that brings you right back to the doctrines of grace and why we need to understand them.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to start to conclude at this point. Real quick, who's your top 5 favorite Reformed teachers or preachers?
Danny, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I do not have. When I thought about this and I was like, all right, who are my go-tos? And I don't. Again, when I started my journey of my Christian journey, and it kind of just, I stumbled upon this path of thinking about it in this way, and I think that it's legit. Of the Reformed camp, I didn't think about it as like, oh, now I'm Reformed. I did for a little bit, and then I was like, I gotta stop that. Nobody cares. So like now I don't think about who am I listening to that's Reformed. I'm just like, well, are they doing a good job? One, expositing the text, and are they communicating well? Like, is it palatable for someone to understand, especially when I'm dealing with stuff at work? So are
they effective communicators?
My list probably has like 2 or 3 people that you wouldn't consider Reformed.
Okay.
So these are just my go-to guys.
T.D. Jakes.
Los with his book that he wrote recently.
Name it and claim it.
So
come on, man.
Best-selling author in here.
Walk Thy Land. RC for sure.
RC Sproul.
I think that he is really good at understanding the text and making, all these guys are really good at understanding the text and making it palatable for me to understand without having to basically read what they read. They're good at communicating. Spurgeon for sure.
Charles Spurgeon.
Piper.
John Piper, absolutely.
I think his passion, even if he may not necessarily be heading, I think he's for the most part always heading in the right direction. I think sometimes he says some things that are like, man, I probably would disagree. His passion for the Lord stirs me. Sinclair Ferguson, love that dude. And same with him. I think that his, like, you can smell the genuine belief in the things that he says. Like, he actually believes what he says. And then one that probably nobody's familiar with, Tim Mackey. Co-founder of the Bible Project.
I was gonna say, yeah, I've heard of him because of the Gospel Project. Nice.
Yeah. So I think that he grew up skateboarding. I grew up skateboarding. So we kind of have that thing in common to where we understand like pop culture, and that's kind of where we come from. And he utilizes that in how he communicates, because he knows his audience, and that's his audience. And I just happen to fit in there. So for me, he's one of those dudes, and he's legit. I think that I go to him more than a lot of other people, and I don't think he would consider himself Reformed. When I listen to his podcast and his sermons, I've heard him quote Luther once, and I've been listening to his stuff for like 5 years.
Wow.
But he's absolutely committed to understanding the scriptures the way that they were delivered to Israel, which is how they were delivered to us. Minus, cultural context and those things you have to take into consideration anytime you're reading literature. Yeah. So that's my list.
That's good.
About you, Los?
Yeah, definitely R.C. Sproul, John Piper, John MacArthur, Alistair Begg.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Alistair Begg, not Sinclair Ferguson.
Yo, why do people always mix those two up?
Because he looks like a Sinclair Ferguson.
Yeah. You're not the first or the second or the third person to mix those two up.
And then when I want to get conviction for my fifth,
Paul Washer.
Yeah. No.
When you feel like you need that,
when I need to examine myself,
coffee no sugar pickup
to see if I'm of the faith, I go to go to Paul Washer.
Yeah, my list is way too long. Like you guys is
I stuck to 5. You said 5.
Yeah.
5,
no.
bro.
I'm saying like
you said our lists are long. He numbered it.
No. I'm saying like you guys. You probably could. You guys could probably just keep on naming guys. So I'll definitely agree with the ones that y'all brought up. I would go with Piper, John MacArthur, Sproul, of course, Big Sproul. I'm gonna throw James White in there. James White has been like instrumental throughout my walk. And then maybe one more in there. Let me think where I want to take this one.
Me. I got you. All right, yeah. I appreciate you.
I
try hard, bro.
I'm going to throw Steve Lawson in there. Love Steve Lawson.
Fiery preacher.
Love Steve Lawson.
Yeah, that dude's he's passionate for the Lord as well. I mean, all these guys are.
Seriously. We could go on naming Vody. You could name.
Yeah, you got to name Vody.
You can name even guys like Art Azurdia. You could, I mean,
You're
yeah.
breaking hearts.
Hopefully,
right
hopefully we can get him on the podcast one day. But anyway, we can go
now. I
on
would
for
just
a
like to
minute.
talk to him and see how he's
That's
doing.
what we would like to talk to him. You
Yeah.
know, just I think he could still speak to some things.
Minister
you know?
in a sense.
Yeah.
I think so.
So I don't like that
Paul
criticism
Washer.
about what to do with his books. It's
I
like,
don't either. I thought
you know what
that
I'm saying?
was kind of.
Don't read Psalm 51 then. You know what I'm saying? Like,
alright. So thank you guys for showing up. We really appreciate you. 'Cause that was the ender.
seriously, man. You know.
Yeah,
man,
no, seriously.
So yeah.
Anyway, yeah, we can go on with Paul Washer and a bunch of those guys that really just dig deep. Any concluding thoughts on this topic right here on Reformed theology, the doctrines of grace, maybe even any concern that you might have for Reformed culture today?
You first, bro.
Here's what I would say. That I tire sometimes. You know, I'm of Reformed faith. You know, and so I understand, and sometimes I feel like I have the right to criticize my own camp because I'm in my camp.
Right.
You know what I'm
It's
saying?
kind of like I'm black. I say that.
Yeah. I was just gonna say,
I'm Puerto
yep.
Rican.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So I do take jabs at my own, you know, community, you know, my own way of thinking and people that are within our camp. But I do tire sometimes of the criticism of those of our camp. You know, and I think it's unfair. I think
The outside criticizing the Reformed camp?
or even within sometimes. I think sometimes we need to take a break from that and just delight ourselves in the fact that God is sovereign, He's in control. Let's enjoy the doctrines of grace. You know,
Gotcha.
So
Actually live like they're true. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I think a lot of times we already get a lot of criticism from outside of people that constantly criticize us. And what I tell people is, you know, when you go into a city, very seldom do you see a solid Reformed church, you know? And so people think because we speak loud and we're very confident that we're like almost the majority out there bullying everybody. We're actually, I would consider ourselves the minority in a lot of circles.
Black Sheep episode 12,
Right.
I'll be
maybe?
there for that one as well.
No, we did it already.
Oh, no.
Episode 12,
Right.
Black Sheep, I believe it was.
So, yeah.
He really dug into that one.
Yeah, and I think it was deserved. And so my concluding thoughts is let's
he just subtly threw
Rumor
that
has
in
it
there.
he's still digging.
yeah.
We were because we were dealing with that on a local level,
Yeah.
being
Oh.
persecuted as Calvinist / Reformed.
Criticized. Absolutely.
Oh.
And I'm not going to apologize to anybody for being reformed. You know, that's number one. And number two, I have criticized my own camp for our flaws. Okay. Number three, I've come from the charismatic Pentecostal church. And I would say, of course, I've seen more abuse in the charismatic Pentecostal church, than I have in being in the Reformed side, even though there are abuses, you know, but I think it runs rampant because of a theological problem within the charismatic Pentecostal church. So I've come to appreciate where I'm at. I love the doctrines of grace. I think they should compel us to be gracious, not to be snobby. And if anyone's snobby who says they're reformed, then they're immature and they don't really implement the doctrines of grace as they should. So don't let them spoil it for you.
Yeah,
you know?
man.
Just like the other camps have their issues, they have human beings in there that are prideful and selfish and whatever. We have those too. And so don't let them mess up the doctrines of. Look at them biblically and conclude from there. But try to avoid some of the personalities that can spoil it. And I don't think the scriptures or even the doctrines of grace are deserving of that. So that's what I would say.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's good. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, I'll actually piggyback off of what he said. So I
No, you can't.
too bad. So
My back hurts, man. I can't be carrying nobody.
I carry myself. You seen my streams?
Oh, man.
Get too old for that, bro.
Oh shoot. So I would say that as far as a concern that I have is I have to piggyback off of what he said, because I was talking to Abner last year. I still feel that frustration with, and I called Los, like, man, this was maybe like 2 or 3 months. This was in the spring. And I had a run-in on Instagram, on Wrath and Grace's Instagram, with someone who obviously was of the Reformed camp. Otherwise, he wouldn't follow Wrath and Grace. And it was the most unpleasant, disrespectful, lack of compassion encounter I've ever had with somebody of the Reformed camp, to the point where thinking of our outline today, and that was the one concern that popped in my mind, was I'm concerned with people who act like that and who are of the camp. Like, I think that you are holding the proper weapon, but you don't know how to use it. And I wouldn't say, therefore, set it down or whatever. I would say, like, go take some. You don't buy a gun without taking classes on how to shoot. Yeah. That's stupid.
Yeah.
And so my concern is, I really wish that people would not come into the Reformed faith or remain in the Reformed faith as if it's just a school of thought. It's you're meant to sit in the classrooms, you're meant to hear the lectures and the sermons and read the books and the essays and the articles. You're meant to do all of that for it to change you. So when God set out to sovereignly save you and keep you, he did it so you would be, as Paul said, a new creation. And that's supposed to be evident. This is how people will know that you are my disciples, that you love one another. Jesus talks in John 15 of bearing fruit, because that's what God desires. That's what God wants. He wants fruit. He doesn't want people who know the right thing, because nobody cares. I genuinely do not care if you're Reformed or not. I've gotten to the point personally where, and I know people, a good buddy of mine, he said the same thing. Is like, man, sometimes I prefer hanging out with Pentecostals or more charismatic people, because they're more, they're able to enjoy fellowship sometimes more than Reformed folk, who tend to criticize things more often. And so my concern is that, and it was a concern for me too, and still is. I remember years ago freaking out because I saw myself digging into Reformed theology and just gaining this gigantic head, but it wasn't actually doing anything. And it hit me like, wait a minute, this ain't why this stuff is here. Like, these doctrines, and honestly, you could just take Reformed and throw it out the window. Scripture is not here just to give you this big head, and, like, you know, the Lord's not gonna examine your knowledge, your level of intellect. He's gonna examine your fruit, and so that's what's important to him. And so I was on the phone crying with a pastor of mine at the time, just like, yo, pray for me, because I don't want a fat head. I want to actually bear fruit. I have to learn these things, and there's a danger of becoming prideful, but I recognize that these things are supposed to change my character, and if that's what they're there for, then that's what I'm after. And I think that a lot of people are missing that. And I'm not putting myself above them, because I still fall into that sin, even doing something like this. And, you know, it's tempting to feel like the man. But you have to walk away knowing that, like, hey, this is supposed to affect me, which is why the psalmist tells us to meditate. That's why God told Joshua to meditate, using the same exact language as Psalm 1, right? And to meditate often. For what? For the sake of fruit. And so, yeah, I would say to my Reformed brothers and sisters, man, I'm happy. It's good to be in class with you. And to those who are not Reformed, hey, we're still going to sit at the dinner table together. And this is going to sound a type of way. I don't have time to explain what I mean, unpack it, but I don't really care that you're not Reformed. I'm happy that you're saved. You know, we'll get there. You know what I'm saying? One way or another, we're going to get there. I'm happy that you're here. Yeah. Like, let's kick it, man. Reformed or not, let's kick it.
No, the Bible does not say you are saved by Reformed faith alone.
Right.
So anyway.
And I think God is going to have assigned seats in heaven, and you're going to have to sit next to especially if you were one to argue a lot. Okay, you're cool, you're saved. Now you got to sit next to the kid you were arguing all the time with. And I'm curious to see how that's going to happen. And I'll be on the other side of the table, like.
Yep.
You remember it.
I'm like, yo, pass me the butter.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, man. I don't know when it comes to concerns for Reformed culture today, I would just say kind of, I'm going to piggyback off of what you said.
That's fine. I can carry.
All right, here we go. Kind of the end part of it, which is, you don't have to be reformed in order to be a true follower of Christ.
Amen.
And I would say that with no apologies.
James White says that.
Yeah, James White says a lot, but
I'm just saying.
No, I
like,
know.
He's
no,
a staunch Reformed Baptist.
Yes,
But
yeah.
he made it a point to say Reformed theology doesn't save you.
Yeah, because before the Reformation, there were people getting saved. So, and I know I said earlier that a lot of the theology that comes from the Reformed camp was before the Reformation anyway. So, what we're talking about tonight extends further,
Right.
Back in history,
Yeah.
than the Great Reformation and all of those guys that come during that period. So, understanding that everyone, no matter where you're at with this, should be going back to what the scriptures say. And
that is Reformed theology.
That is,
or it's supposed to be. It's
right.
Imperfect like all other things, but it's
right.
It's the pursuit of dang it, what's the Latin term that Luther coined? I can't remember, but ad fontes, was it ad fontes? Like going to the source? I can't.
I'm sure it
remember
is. I saw some Reform guy post ad fontes earlier, so I'm sure it is.
He has a tattoo on his wrist.
He's a rapper.
Ad
Josh
fontes?
Kreese. That's his mixtape project. So anyway, I'm on there, by the way. But anyway.
Oh, shameless plug.
Anyway.
I mean, you don't have to copy, but it's a couple bucks.
No,
put in a lot of
that's my guy though. Shout out to him.
After
but
work, we recorded.
Yeah,
you can catch it on iTunes on this date.
Just remembering that this is historic right here. This is historical. These things that we're talking about, it's been there since the moments that the scriptures were written, since the beginning of time. The gospel has been talked about. So placing an emphasis on understanding the gospel, there's nothing wrong with that. So anyway, this is where we'll conclude this episode. This has been an intro to the Doctrines of Grace. I don't know what episode number this is going to be, but thank you for showing up, Danny.
Yeah,
we appreciate you.
Yeah, man.
If you guys do gaming, where can they catch you?
Because
you're a true gamer.
Hard.
yeah.
So
you're a 5-point gamer.
Yes, and that will be on my tombstone. I don't know about Calvin, but so if you're into video gaming, whether it's streaming or just video games in general, I have a YouTube channel. You catch me Phantom, Phantom. And then on Facebook, you can follow my gaming page at Danny Phantom, and it's Danny FNTM. There I stream, I post all my content. It's just I'm not doing walkthroughs. I'm just gaming and experiencing the game. I edit it, I throw some memes and funny music and post it on YouTube. Hope to make somebody laugh. So yeah, that's where you can catch me on YouTube and on Facebook.
Y'all make sure y'all check that out. Los, you want to throw the plugs in there?
Yeah, man. wrathandgrace.com. Make sure you go to the website and support again.
Cop his new book.
Facebook.com/group/thebasement. If you want to be a part of our group page, make sure you sign on and even contribute to the discussion, to the question being asked on a thread on the group page. So make sure you go there. The address is right there on your screen. Make sure you share and like the video. It's good to share the love and let people know what's going on here on Wrath and Grace. I think tonight was a dope discussion. We just we're chopping. We were just talking. It felt like just a regular conversation, so it was a blessing. And so share the conversation with people on Facebook. And lastly, we do have a Patreon account, patreon.com/thebasement717. Man, give $1. Holler for $1, $2,
Pennsylvania.
$3.
Hit the tax, 106.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Or if you want to really help us bless somebody, because our money goes right back into the ministry. Our money goes right back into sending the missionary trip to Dominican Republic. So you know what I mean? Like, if y'all really want to bless, just throw 100 in there.
Yeah, I mean,
I ain't going. Listen, man, name it, claim it, and game it. So anyway, we out of here,
claim
y'all.
it and game it.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
All right,
Anyway,
y'all.
this was another episode of The Basement, where theology meets the thoughts of life. This episode is called The Doctrines of Grace Intro. It was great to be with y'all today. God bless y'all.
All right, grace and peace.
Peace.